America is still reeling from a suicide blast at Hamid Karzai International Airport yesterday, which claimed the lives of 13 U.S. servicemen, the most U.S. troops killed in Afghanistan in a single incident since 2011. As the nation searches for answers, the administration seems unwilling to hold anyone accountable for the disaster we've seen unfold over the past several weeks, a posture that seems unlikely to change anytime soon. Friends, it's time for Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. Horrific day for the country yesterday. We lost 13 of our best in Kabul, Afghanistan, because of a suicide bombing attack that the Biden administration is attributing to the ISIS-K terrorist group, the Islamic State of Khorasan. Still questions certainly out there about how certain we could be about this. Joe Biden promising that he will hunt down those responsible for the attack in an address last night. Here's what he said.
Anyone who wishes America harm, know this: we will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down and make you pay. I will defend our interests and our people with every measure at my command.
I don't think the Taliban are scared of him. Not at all. I don't think ISIS-Khorasan is scared of him. Not even a little bit. We all know that this is an utter humiliation of the regime right now, the Biden regime that is going on. There's no way for them to spin this. There's no way for them to make it seem like this isn't going into the seventh circle of hell right now in Kabul, a total mess. So what do? Oh, that's right. It's a bad situation. But it's not Biden's fault, you see. He takes responsibility, but also wants to make sure that he passes on responsibility to his predecessor, Donald Trump.
I bear responsibility for fundamentally all that's happened of late. But here's the deal. You know, I wish you'd one day say these things. You know as well as I do that the former president made a deal with the Taliban that he would get all American forces out of Afghanistan by May 1. In return, the commitment was made, and that was a year before. In return, he was given a commitment that the Taliban would continue to attack others, but would not attack any American forces. Remember that? I'm being serious. No, I'm asking you a question. Because before... No, wait a minute. I'm asking you a question. Is that accurate, the best of your knowledge? What?
I don't think it's the issue that, do you think that people have an issue with pulling out of Afghanistan or just the way that things have happened?
I mean, you saw it for yourself. Does it look like Joe Biden's in command? Does it look like Joe Biden's calling the shots here? He's debating a member of the press corps, of course, someone from Fox News, because they're pretty much the only people that ask real questions of the Biden administration that have access. There are a few others. What's going to really happen here? Well, first, let's start with, do we even know who is responsible for the attack yesterday? Can we know the Taliban was not complicit in some way, perhaps turned a blind eye to it? I mean, given the fact that we didn't even see that, when I say we, the Biden administration, with all of the spy satellites, intelligence sources, enormous military budget, all the different computers and surveillance gear, everything they had. We didn't know that the Afghan army that we spent billions of dollars to train and decades, would melt away in less than 2 weeks. So with that being recent history in Afghanistan, why should we think that the Pentagon even knows right now who's really responsible for what happened and whether the Taliban can be trusted at all? We all know they can't be trusted, but this is a situation we're in. Here's Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby. Can't rule out Taliban was involved.
John, how can you say with such certainty, and how can General McKenzie say with such certainty that the Taliban were not involved in this suicide bombing? I understand that you're reliant on them for protection around the airport, but are you ruling out them being involved because you're so dependent on the Taliban right now?
Actually, I didn't hear General McKenzie put it that way, Jen. In fact, I think in one of the questions he got, and I think it was Idris's, he said, Idris asked, was there a failure? And the general said, of course, there was a failure somewhere, obviously. And he even alluded to the fact that it could have been at a Taliban checkpoint. So we've not been certain about that at all.
So let's just all be on the same page here. They don't really know. So Biden's saying we'll hold them accountable. That also does nothing to change the security situation on the ground to make us more, or our people, I should say, more safe. It does not change the security situation so that there's not a high likelihood, as was reported today, that there will be another terror attack. Meanwhile, the other big issue that looms, we've got the possibility of another terrorist strike, and we have, are we going to get all the Americans out before the purported August 31st timeline? Here's Jen Psaki saying, can't guarantee it.
Is the U.S. guaranteeing that you will be able to get out?
I don't think we can guarantee, but what we can do is work toward, and this is what the president directed the Secretary of State to continue diplomatic efforts with international partners to secure means for third country nationals, Afghans with visas who may be eligible for our programs, of course, any American citizen who remains in country to leave the country even after the U.S. military presence ends. There's a means of mechanisms for that. Those conversations are ongoing. That's our objective. Our commitment does not change on August 31st. Obviously, we need to figure out the operational mechanisms, which is the conversation that's underway.
Can't guarantee it because they're probably going to leave some behind. There are reports that some Americans, even with passports and that are clearly American citizens, have been turned back from Taliban checkpoints. Oh, and then there's also the report that a name list was passed out to the Taliban by the United States government, by the Biden administration, with all the Afghan allies on it, SIV visa holders, American citizens. What a catastrophe. Some people are saying there should be accountability here. I think it's unlikely that that will happen. The Biden administration doesn't really believe in accountability per se. But here's Marine Lieutenant Colonel Stu Scheller, who's saying there needs to be accountability.
The reason people are so upset on social media right now is not because the Marine on the battlefield let someone down. That service member has always rose to the occasion and done extraordinary things. People are upset because their senior leaders let them down, and none of them are raising their hands and accepting accountability or saying, we messed this up. We have a Secretary of Defense that testified to Congress in May that the Afghan National Security Force could withstand the Taliban advance. We have chairmen of Joint Chief, who the Commandant is a member of that, who's supposed to advise on military policy. We have a Marine combatant commander. All of these people are supposed to advise, and I'm not saying we've got to be in Afghanistan forever, but I am saying, did any of you throw your rank on the table and say, hey, it's a bad idea to evacuate Bagram Airfield, the strategic air base, before we evacuate everyone? Did anyone do that? I want to say this very strongly. I have been fighting for 17 years. I am willing to throw it all away to say to my senior leaders, I demand accountability.
He's absolutely right. And that's what courage actually looks like in the case of accountability and making sure that we get answers. We'll have more on the U.S. response to yesterday's deadly attacks in Kabul with Heritage Foundation Vice President Jim Carafano when we come back. But right now, let's talk about that morning cup of joe for a minute. If you're like me, you got to start your day off with some caffeine, and that means kicking it off with Black Rifle Coffee. This is the best coffee I've ever had. It's from a veteran-owned company that serves premium coffee to people who love America, and they support veteran law enforcement and first responder causes. This is the coffee you should be drinking every day. Black Rifle imports its high-quality beans from all over the world, roasts them 5 days a week at facilities right here in the U.S. in Tennessee and Utah. The team at Black Rifle is always researching and experimenting with new roasting methods and coffee origins to bring you the most delicious cup of coffee possible. Purchase today at blackriflecoffee.com/buck and use code BUCK at checkout for 20% off your purchase and your first coffee club order. Fuel your summer with America's coffee, Black Rifle Coffee. Jim Carafano is with us when we come back. After his latest briefing on the unfolding madness in Afghanistan, President Joe Biden placed the responsibility on ISIS-K for the bombings at Kabul's airport. After Biden acknowledged the U.S. had known the threat was imminent, the White House apparently just sat around and watched things fall to pieces around the airport. James Carafano offered his take on Biden's lack of planning. He writes in a Fox op-ed, after a 90-day intelligence review, his administration still can't figure out if COVID came out of a Chinese lab, but the president is already pretty sure ISIS-K organized the attacks in the Kabul airport. After creating an impossibly unsustainable situation with a chaotic no plan for withdrawal, no plan, he said that he was relying on the advice of military commanders. Biden has still given no indication of any plan to deal with the tsunami of terror that is sure to come. James Carafano is a retired Army lieutenant colonel who's also the VP of National Security and Foreign Policy at the Heritage Foundation. He joins me to discuss. Jim, good to see you.
Well, I'd like to say it's good to see you, man, but this is really one for the record books. I have never seen this much crisis created this quickly that put Americans this deeply in a hole.
How did it get so bad, Jim? Just take us. How could this be? People have been asking me this, and I just keep saying they truly must have had no idea the entire Afghan army was going to not even lose. They didn't lose. They disintegrated in 11 days. What happened?
Well, I think the reality is look, Trump had a plan, but I think Biden just came in and he just scared himself out of Afghanistan. He was just positive the whole country was going to fall apart. And his notion was, since he was gifting the country to the Taliban, that the Taliban would let the United States leave. And then after they left, things would fall apart. And we would get to say, not our watch, not our problem. And then we would just deal with it. We came afterwards. And you would say, well, this doesn't sound very smart or very reasonable. But when you think about it, this is exactly what they did when they ran away from Iraq and ISIS metastasized. It's exactly what they did with the Syria Red Line, thinking that, they would never get crossed, and it did. It's exactly what they thought in Libya before Benghazi. So when you have exactly the same people put in charge of exactly the same situations, why are we surprised that they made exactly the same decision? This one, however, may be the most consequential because they've literally unleashed global terrorism on the world again, not just by recreating a more powerful terrorist sanctuary in Afghanistan. Because remember, on the anniversary of 9/11, the Taliban will have more territory, more money, more friends, more arms than they did on the first 9/11. But this is a global clarion call worldwide for Islamist terrorists to rise up against the United States. This is a much, much bigger problem, even than Iraq or Syria or Libya, that they've created for us, not for themselves.
People are talking about this as the most egregious foreign policy blunder in recent memory. What would you compare this to? How far back do you think you have to go for a situation that is of this both gravity and incompetence rolled into one?
I would say Chamberlain and the appeasement to Munich and that triggered off World War II, because this has implications not just for a resurgence in the global war on terror, but we've just kind of gifted Afghanistan to China. That's a land bridge to Iran. That's their own economic highway into Western Europe. It's control of all the mineral wealth in Afghanistan. It outflanks India, potentially puts all of South Asia in China's sphere of influence. It's a blow in both global competition and the global war on terror. So it's potentially history shaking. So yeah, I would go back to the outbreak of World War II.
Jim, it's also been reported that the Biden administration, the assessments they're getting from intelligence sources indicate that another attack is not just possible, likely is the term that is coming up today. And people have been asking me about this because I used to assess these kinds of reports back in the CIA and saying, yeah, if I were the bad guys here, Jim, and I wanted to create chaos and I wanted to kill more people, kill more Americans, I would see a continuing soft target. Is there a way to counter that other than just asking the Taliban, which it feels crazy asking you this, Jim, but other than asking the Taliban to do a better job of providing initial perimeter security, what can we do to stop the next massive suicide attack at the airport in the next few days?
Something nobody's really talked about is, in some ways, I think the president's partially responsible for this, not just in planning the operation, but this administration had this constant drumbeat saying, we're doing the largest airlift in history. We're doing such a fantastic job. We're doing so amazing. We're working with the Taliban. We are so great that that's like waving a red flag in front of a bull. They're basically baiting a terrorist to attack them because it makes them look even more feckless and weak. So we're well beyond the help of the Taliban or anything. The only thing they can really do at this point is bug out as quickly as possible. The quicker they get those guys out of there, the less likely you're going to have another Custer's Last Stand or Dien Bien Phu.
Do you think that the Biden administration can recover from this, Jim? I mean, is this, I know that we're kind of skewing off of, for a moment here, the pure national security implications and the on-the-ground military and humanitarian realities of all this, but this is all tied into Biden administration planning or lack thereof. How do they stumble on after this? Are we just supposed to memory hold this disaster, however it shakes out in the next few days?
Well, first of all, they've got problems that aren't going to go away and are going to continue to plague them throughout this term. The hostage thing, there's still Americans running around the country. There are ISIS and Al-Qaeda and everybody else running around looking for these Americans so they can take them hostage and take a picture of them in a basement in a blindfold and continue to horror this administration. And I know that every night the Biden guys are going to bed and they're afraid they're going to wake up in the morning and see the picture of an American with a blindfold in front of a camera. Then they've got the terrorism issue, which is metastasizing as we speak. Then they've got the competition with China issue in South Asia, which they've totally screwed up. None of those problems are going to go away in the next 3 years. And what's worse is they keep giving every indication that they don't know how to deal with these and are making it worse. And I'll give you the most troubling example right now. Because they've exhausted every other option and they have no capability on the ground, that their last hope is we're going to have a relationship with the Taliban, which it is in itself is proven disastrous. But here's the problem. They're doing in Afghanistan right now what we did in Pakistan for decades was we're going to have a relationship with the ISI. We're going to have a relationship with the Pakistan military. We know they work with terrorists, but they're all we have, and they work with us, and they do stuff for us. And what they do is they play us. They demand a heavy price for what they do. They play a double game. And when the Taliban invaded Afghanistan, the president of Pakistan stood up and declared the Taliban had liberated the country from occupation. So now what we're going to stupidly do is we're going to go and have the same relationship with the Taliban as we do with ISI and the Pakistan military. You think that's going to strengthen our footprint in the region?
Nope.
And they keep making these mistakes. And again, they're not rookie mistakes because it's not a rookie team. This isn't Jimmy Carter in his first 100 days. This is a seasoned, experienced, maybe the most experienced foreign policy national security team that's come into government in decades.
So why are they screwing? Before that you go, Jim, why are they screwing it up so badly? Just real quick, how could they mess it up so badly?
Because they're bad.
So they're seasoned but bad at their jobs. It's basically where we are. Yeah, Jim.
They're like the bureaucrat and yes minister that you never fire, no matter how disastrous they are. It's and we voted them in, so we got what we voted for, my friend.
That is the answer that I thought you might give, and it's the one that makes the most sense. Always appreciate the perspective, Jim. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, brother.
The Capitol Hill police officer who shot and killed Ashley Babbitt has finally publicly broken his silence. Jim Hansen, former U.S. Army Special Forces member, joins us after the break to discuss what we've learned. Before that, I want to tell you about my friends at My Digital Money, because cryptocurrency is hot. Bitcoin, Ethereum, dozens of tokens out there. That's why you need to check out My Digital Money. This is an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with amazing customer service, and they'll help you get started. Your comfort and security is their absolute top priority. They offer an unparalleled military-grade security for your coins, trigger orders to help you secure opportunities for gains or limit losses, a play money account so you can test the market, and look, the crypto market's really heating up these days, and this might be the best time in a long time to get into this exciting technology-based investment, especially if you've never done it before. When it comes to your money, you deserve a team of dedicated professionals who have your back, speak to you honestly, and treat you like a human, not a number. Check them out at mydigitalmoney.com. That's mydigitalmoney.com. We'll be right back with more. Hold the line. That was the moment a Capitol Hill police officer shot and killed 35-year-old Ashley Babbitt, an unarmed Air Force veteran who was there and riding on January 6th. Going public for the first time in an interview with NBC, Lieutenant Michael Byrd of Capitol Hill Police defended his actions by saying he followed his training and, quote, saved countless lives that day. Watch.
I followed my training, and I spent countless years and preparing for such a moment. You ultimately hope that moment never occurs, but you prepare as best you can. I know that day I saved countless lives. I know members of Congress as well as my fellow officers and staff were in jeopardy and in serious danger. And that's my job.
Was it really his training, or was it a panic shot? Let's ask our next guest, who trained SWAT and hostage rescue teams on shoot, no shoot situations. Jim Hansen, former Special Forces and author of Winning the Second Civil War Without Firing a Shot. He joins me now. Jim, always appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Buck.
So just tell me, I mean, in your analysis of this, we showed that video there. There's a woman who is in the process of trying to climb through a broken window. She's shot in the neck, Ashley Babbitt. She's killed right then and there. He says that he viewed that as an imminent threat and that he saved a lot of lives. I need to understand, would it also have been justified? There are a lot of people there banging on that door. Could he have just opened fire and killed everybody at the door? Because I don't see how the use of force justification really differs, because any one of them could have broken through that door as they were hitting it.
Yeah, he seems to have decided to shoot someone, and she drew the short straw. The one thing you have to understand, and Buck, you do, under any circumstances, you cannot use deadly force unless you fear for your life or the life of others, or you're protecting something that has a use of deadly force authorization. There was an empty hallway behind Officer Byrd. There were two other officers in suits wandering around pretty unconcerned at that point in time. And all of a sudden, because one 5'2", 120-pound unarmed female comes toward him through a window, he decides that gives him the right to kill her. I'm sorry, that's not an authorized use of deadly force. That's murder.
Jim, it seems to me that the politics of this are what's driving the decision by Capitol Hill Police, that they've branded all these individuals, treasonous insurrectionists seeking to overthrow the government. And so their rights, the normal rights we'd have, don't really apply. I mean, just to think of it in another context, if a BLM rioter was coming toward a police officer and the police officer yelled stop, and the BLM rioter was an unarmed female like this and was shot in the neck, I'm pretty sure the media would treat it quite differently.
I'm pretty sure if that had happened, DC would be burning right now. And that's the difference. You hit the nail on the head. This is being driven by the politics, both the Black Lives Matter angle and also the fact that the left seized on the idea of an insurrection. They invented one for the Capitol out of a garden variety riot that happened to occur at the Capitol. And now they're not going to allow anything to interfere with that. And so finding this guy culpable in any way, even though any reasonable reading of that situation shows he could have walked over and pushed her back through that window and she'd have fallen on her butt, none the worse for wear. He made a decision, it was the wrong one, and he should bear the consequences of it, not be protected by the politicians.
You know, the officer's remarks from last night came just a few days after the U.S. Capitol Police said they would not discipline Lieutenant Byrd following an internal investigation of the lethal January 6th shooting. Here is Lieutenant Michael Byrd describing the moments leading up to this, where he says that Ashley Babbitt was a threat.
When you fired, what could you see? Where were you aiming?
You're taught to aim for center mass. The subject was sideways, and I could not see her full motion of her hands or anything. So I guess her movement, caused the discharge to fall where it did.
And what did you think this individual was doing at that moment?
She was posing a threat to the United States House of Representatives.
How, Jim, was she posing a threat to the House of Representatives? There were rioters all over the Capitol complex. None of them actually killed anybody. How was Ashley Babbitt an imminent threat to the lives of either members of Congress or anybody for that matter in that moment when that shot was taken?
You have to have evidence that a reasonable person would lead them to assume she was about to cause death or destruction. She was simply climbing through a window. And Lieutenant Byrd literally signs his own, statement there saying he did the wrong thing, telling people he couldn't even see her hands. So he didn't know if she had a weapon or not. That's not how that works. You have to have positive identification saying that you see a distinct and imminent, immediate deadly threat. He saw none of that and went ahead and fired anyhow. And now he's not just getting the benefit of the doubt, he's getting a complete whitewashing by all of the Capitol Police, the leadership of the Democrat Party, and the mainstream media. I don't think this is even a reasonable way to treat any cop in a situation like this, let alone one who on video shot an unarmed woman.
Statement from Ashley Babbitt's family attorney says as follows: Babbitt was not brandishing a weapon, was not in close proximity to members of Congress, and was not an imminent threat of death or serious injury to anyone. Jim, you've trained SWAT teams. You understand shoot, don't shoot, rules of engagement. Anything the attorney's missing here?
The attorneys have set this up and they're going to collect a very massive check for Ashley's family. That's a shame. It's a shame that has to happen. But the bottom line is Lieutenant Byrd murdered her. This was not a use of deadly force that can be justified.
Jim, your expertise is appreciated, my friend. Good to see you. We'll talk to you soon.
Good talking with you, Buck.
The White House took another legal loss this week as the Supreme Court voted to block the Biden administration's eviction moratorium. What does it mean for landlords and renters around the country? New York Post columnist David Marcus joins us next to help tackle that question. But speaking of renting, I want to take a moment to tell you about renting in an opportunity in the real estate market where you can rent out homes to people. That's how it works. You ever wanted to invest in real estate, but you didn't know how to do it on your own? Well, I felt exactly the same way as you until about a year ago. Always loved the idea of real estate investment, but I didn't want to get involved until I had some expertise, some guidance. That's when I met my friends at Done For You Real Estate. They took all the guesswork out of it for me. In fact, I'm in the process right now of purchasing another home through Done For You Real Estate because they're amazing. Every step of the process they'll take you through. They'll pick the city, the house, get the loan set up, get a tenant in place for you, and a management company that'll handle the whole thing for you. All you have to do right now is go to doneforyoubuck.com. See what my friends can do for you. That's doneforyoubuck.com to begin your real estate investment journey. We've got the New York Post, David Marcus, up next. Yet again, another blow to the Biden administration. The United States Supreme Court has struck down the president's eviction moratorium, ruling the policy can only be extended through action from Congress, not the CDC. What a shock. In a 6-3 decision, the High Court wrote, if a federally imposed eviction moratorium is to continue, Congress must specifically authorize it. The application to vacate stay presented to the Chief Justice and by him referred to the court is granted, so ordered. This is the second loss of the Biden administration this week at the hands of the High Court's conservative majority. David Marcus is here. He's a columnist at the wonderful New York Post, and he joins us now to discuss. David, good to see you.
Nice to see you, Buck.
I mean, if the CDC, this is one of these things, you don't have to be a lawyer, you don't have to know much about the law at all. If the CDC can just say, yeah, you can't collect rent money or evict people anymore if they don't want to pay it, there's no such thing as private property in America, really, right? I mean, what can't the CDC do?
I think we've learned over the past 18 months that the CDC and presidential administrations can do a lot. But yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. And look, the Supreme Court was perfectly clear about this in its initial decision, right? They said, all right, we're going to give you a little time, pass a law, right? Remember when we passed laws in this country? They said, pass a law, and that's how you do this. And then Joe Biden said, I don't have the authority to do this. And then Representative Cori Bush did a sit-in with about 18 people on the steps of the Capitol. And somehow that made Joe Biden cave and say, even though I think this is unconstitutional, I'm going to do it anyway. I mean, this was so predictable that it's amazing that that Biden tried it at all.
And yet he said it's unconstitutional. Isn't that amazing? I mean, when you have a president who says, I don't have the power to do this, but I'm just going to tell the people that the federal government pays and some of whom have guns, we're just going to do this anyway. That starts to feel like really close to an open authoritarian philosophy of government in this country. The White House responded, by the way, the Biden administration is disappointed, they wrote, that the Supreme Court has blocked the most recent CDC eviction moratorium while confirmed cases of the Delta variant are significant across the country. In light of the Supreme Court ruling, President Biden's once again calling on all entities that can prevent evictions from cities and states to local courts, landlords, cabinet agencies to urgently act to prevent evictions. I mean, David, why not just say, what, hotels are not allowed to charge anymore? Because, maybe someone has to quarantine or get away. So, CDC could certainly do that under the same logic.
I mean, the White House is disappointed. My son is disappointed he can't eat ice cream sandwiches for dinner. I mean, it was always absurd. And, I think it's interesting that this comes, the same week that another Democratic Party stunt managed to fail, which was the Texas Democrats fleeing the state to come to D.C. Now that, election law has passed down in Texas, this is another, they're just stunts, right? They're this strange kind of political activism instead of actually doing your job, which is to legislate. And the eviction moratorium was fascinating, though, because it was so clear that Nancy Pelosi didn't have the votes, didn't want to deal with it. Biden didn't want to deal with it, and they caved to the squad. And I honestly don't understand why.
It's amazing that Bill de Blasio, I shouldn't say it's amazing. And nothing, I take that back. Nothing Bill de Blasio does is too stupid, too reckless, too lawless. He's in a class by himself. But he went to Twitter to respond to the SCOTUS decision, Supreme Court decision about the eviction moratorium. He wrote that a group of right-wing extremists, maybe insurrectionists even, just decided to throw families out of their homes during a global pandemic. This is an attack on working people across our country and city. New York won't stand for this vile, unjust decision. What do you think de Blasio is going to do in response to this? I mean, are we going to have a local block on rent collection? Because I feel like de Blasio doesn't care what he destroys.
No, I mean, he clearly doesn't. But I mean, the idea that Chief Justice John Roberts, is a right-wing extremist, I mean, that would come as news to a lot of conservatives who have been disappointed by a good number of his decisions over the past several years, including, defending Obamacare and a host of others. So, that's really unfortunate. And I actually think it's unfortunate that the three liberals on the court weren't on board with this one, because this one should have been pretty obvious, right? And I think you had Justice Breyer putting out COVID charts and saying, oh, look at the Delta variant. Well, I mean, that's not how the law works. So I was disappointed in the liberal justices in a way that I tend not to be.
What do you think is going to happen, David, with you've been all over the COVID mandates and an authoritarian Fauciism since the very beginning, and appreciate the work you've done on that. We now have New York City straight up enforcing. I was out to dinner last night, told to show my papers, not allowed to go inside until I did. They're doing this thing. Do you see this spreading across the country? And are we just going to reach a point where, whether it's your employer or it's your ability to go to restaurants, they're just going to force everyone to get the shot, aren't they? I mean, that seems to be where we're heading, unless I'm missing something.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think like so much of this, it's going to depend where you are. But yeah, I mean, clearly in many places across the country, this will be the norm, as will, kids having to wear masks in school, even though, it's unbelievable, because you look at Europe, where kids have not been wearing masks at school, where they've been going to school like normal kids and nothing bad has happened. And we just ignore that. I think one thing that needs to be understood, and I may need to write a column about this soon, is that Biden's White House Corona Task Force is an abject disaster. I mean, nobody knows what's going on. Like, there were flaws to the approach under Trump, but at least these people were on TV taking actual questions. Americans are deeply confused, and that's part of why they're scared enough to allow these, petty bureaucrats to force them into doing ridiculous things.
Masking kids in schools. Fair to say that it's forced child abuse by the state? What would you call it?
I wouldn't disagree with that. I think there's just, they admit that they don't have the data that supports it, right? They say, well, we're not quite sure, so let's err on the side of caution. But as many people have pointed out, we don't need studies. It's happening all over the world, and it's fine. And I think, I've said this before, but the next person who tells me, oh, don't worry, kids are tougher than we think they are, that's not an answer. Our job is to protect them, not to, see what they can endure. This is child abuse.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me. If you said that we have a policy of toughening up kids, so we're going to walk around and, slap every kid in the face once a week so they know what it feels like, people would say, well, that's horrible and abusive, and they'd be right. But strap a mask on their face all day so they can't breathe for no good reason, that's fine. I disagree. And I know you do too. I appreciate the work you do on this, David. We'll talk to you again soon, okay?
Thanks, Buck.
When we come back, New York City mayoral candidate Curtis Sliwa is going to show some compassion during a press conference yesterday. You'll see what we're talking about. Plus, we have video for you in tonight's quick hits of that and more. I want to tell you about my friends at My Digital Money first, though. The crypto market is really hot again, and it seems like everyone wants to get in on the action. But it's not that easy to get started. That's where My Digital Money comes in. It's an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with concierge-level customer service. It's one of the few U.S.-based cryptocurrency companies that will answer your phone call and help you get started. And because your comfort and security is their absolute top priority, they offer an unparalleled military-grade security for your coins, trigger orders to help you secure opportunities without watching your account 24/7, play money so you can actually test the market without risking your actual money. And with the recent rise in the crypto market, this could be a great time to get started. All right, when it comes to your money, you deserve a team of dedicated professionals who have your back, speak to you honestly, and treat you like a human, not a number. Check them out at mydigitalmoney.com. That's mydigitalmoney.com. Quick hits up next. Stay with us. New York City Republican mayoral candidate Curtis Sliwa shows some compassion during a press conference, and the people at Vice show just how awful they truly are. That's not a surprise. Those stories coming up in quick hits. Let's get to it. I like Curtis Sliwa, good guy, very New York guy. If you live here in New York City your whole life, as I have, you certainly know about Curtis Sliwa, the Guardian Angels. And he is running on the Republican ticket to be the next mayor of New York City. I wish I could say it was a good chance he's going to win. I think there is a solid chance that he has here. Maybe an outside chance, but nonetheless, really would be great for the city if Curtis Sliwa actually became the next mayor of this city. And this is a moment where you see what kind of guy he really is as he comforts a man who's clearly having emotional difficulties.
Tolerance is a perfect example. Yo, what's up, man? What's your name?
I'm trying to agree.
Okay, man. How long you lived here?
6 years.
6 years. 6 years. And where you from originally?
I'm from Georgetown, Guyana.
All right, Guyana. Have you ever been hospitalized?
A lot of times.
Like where?
Belgium.
But you're supposed to be on medication?
Yes.
Would you rather be somewhere else than Penn Station? It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's all right, man. It's all right. We'll take care of you, okay?
I just don't want to take advantage of you guys.
You're not taking advantage. This is our responsibility.
That's the guy you want to have as the next mayor of the biggest city in America. I can tell you that right now. I wish my fellow New Yorkers, fellow Democrats, or rather Democrats in New York who are fellow New Yorkers, I'm a Republican, I wish they would see this for what it is, see Curtis for who he is. He'd clean up the streets, he'd make this place safe, he'd make the schools better, he'd make your kids less likely to come across violence and mayhem on our own streets. Be better for everybody. That said, we'll see if the Democrat candidate is at least better than de Blasio when he gets into office. All right, now we have Vice. I mean, look, Vice is a place where a lot of just beta male punks go to work. That much is for sure. But in a Vice tweet, they called Marines neo-Nazis hours after 11 Marines were killed in Kabul. The tweet has since been deleted, but here's what they put up. While many vets are being outed as far-right extremists, one branch keeps popping up when it comes to neo-Nazis, the United States Marine Corps. This is the kind of disgraceful stuff you see from the left, who, unfortunately, if you're a coward and you hate America, you're a leftist in this country. That's just the way it is. You're somebody who take certain positions because that's the culture of the left is to be somebody who relies on the collective, who has a lot of self-doubt, who has a lot of bitterness, and then lashes out at better, braver, smarter men. So not surprising that people from Vice would put that tweet up, or somebody from Vice would put that up. U.S. Special Operations carried out a daring mission to save Afghan allies. This is from ABC News. With the Taliban growing more violent and adding checkpoints near Kabul's airport, an all-volunteer group of American veterans of the Afghan war launched a final daring mission on Wednesday night dubbed the Pineapple Express to shepherd hundreds of at-risk Afghan elite forces and their families to safety, moving after nightfall in near pitch-black darkness and extremely dangerous conditions. The group said it worked unofficially in tandem with the United States military and the U.S. Embassy to move people inside the wire of the U.S. military-controlled side of Hamid Karzai International Airport. So it's pretty touching stuff when you see former members of the military, veterans, who gather together and want to make sure they get their Afghan allies, the guys that they know were there for them, were with them, out as promised by our government. That is the promise that was made to these men. You ask somebody who wore the uniform, carried a weapon in defense of this country overseas, what they think of the interpreters who are with them, and you'll hear stories that'll bring tears to your eyes, which is why these guys are out there. Speaking of tears to your eyes, here's Gary Sinise, an actor who's really a huge patriot and a big supporter of veterans and their families. He paid tribute to the 13 fallen service members.
In honor of the 12 Marines, 1 Navy corpsman that we lost today in Afghanistan, the 15 wounded, and everybody who's serving over in Afghanistan, God bless you. We pray for you and your families. We pay tribute to all our fallen. We'll never forget. Be safe. God bless all those serving in harm's way. God bless our Gold Star families.
That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is up next. Shields high.